Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal are reintroducing their Medicare for All bill. Now, I know what many of you are going to say. This is exactly what we need. Let's fight. Let's try to get this done. But I think that if you follow me through this segment, you will see my frustration. Number one, I wholeheartedly support Medicare for All. I've marched for Medicare for All. I was an MC at the Boston Medicare for All rally about 3.5 years ago. I've advocated for Medicare for All for years. I am someone who has been directly impacted by the healthcare system that we have in this country. I know what it's like to have to pay to visit the doctor when you don't have insurance or you have inadequate insurance. So I've been in that position and I know what it's like. That is a policy that I could never change my mind on. There are many countries in the world that have universal health care and we do not. And I think you all know that a lot of this has to deal with driven profit. That being said, I do not want people to become so excited about this that they lose sight of reality at this current point in time. Right now, Donald Trump is president of the United States. The Democrats do not have the House. The Democrats do not have the Senate. So while Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal are reintroducing this, they are doing so knowing that it is not going to pass the House. It won't make it to the Senate if it doesn't pass the House. And let's say in some magical world it did, Donald Trump would never pass Medicare for All. He would never sign it. He would veto it. So what is this really all about? Let's get into the announcement here. Shout out to Case Study QB doing the damn thing. Check this out.
Democrats on the Hill introducing the Medicare for All bill. The measure would provide health care to all Americans with zero out-of-pocket expense and total choice of provider. The legislation will likely face challenges from Republicans in both chambers. Democrats.
Okay. Did you hear what she just said? The legislation would most likely face challenge from Republicans in both chambers. And people get upset when I say they're doing something that's performative. This is a perfect example because they know that this is not going to pass. They're getting people excited, getting people's hopes up. And honestly, the better time to do this, and some of us talked about this then, was during Force the Vote. It was under Joe Biden's administration. So some of you may be wondering, why is it that Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal did not decide to force the vote on Medicare for All or to push it or to try to reintroduce this again under the Biden administration? Well, there's a difference between making Donald Trump look bad, and actually you probably don't really have to do that. He does that a lot of times on his own, and making Joe Biden look bad. Don't forget, even though Bernie Sanders is an independent, he caucuses with the Democratic Party. And Pramila Jayapal is a Democrat in the House. The problem with the parties is that oftentimes, even those who support those universal policies, they only want to seem to try to fight for it when the Republicans are in control, when there's a Republican president, or there's a Republican House or Republican Senate. They know it's not going to pass. Then they can point their fingers and they can say, look, all those Republicans feel that you shouldn't have health care. What about all the Democrats that feel you shouldn't have health care? One of the reasons for Force the Vote was because it came directly from the DSA handbook, So the idea was that when members of DSA, Justice Democrats, when they have a narrow majority in the House, which they did at that time, then would be the time for them to force a vote for Medicare for All. The strategy at that point in time was to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker unless she agreed to present the Medicare for All bill on the floor. Now, at that time, part of the reason why I feel like this did not come into light, obviously, Nancy Pelosi, the squad not wanting to push back on Dem leadership, wanting to keep their seats. That's a big part of it. But the other part of it is even in independent media, TYT was against it and Majority Report was against it. they have the largest audience, right? If you look at all the other independent media channels that support these progressive policies, they don't have the numbers that TYT and Majority Report did at that point in time. Even though many of TYT's viewers said they supported the squad forcing the vote against Nancy Pelosi, the hosts, Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian, decided, nope, we are not going in that direction. And the reason that they gave is that it is not going to pass. But the strategy of force the vote was not just focusing on whether or not it would pass. The strategy was to primary every single one of the Democrat politicians that would vote against Medicare for all during a time of a pandemic. That really was the optimum time to do it, and it was a missed opportunity. There was a force the vote town hall. Number of people participated. Everyone mentions Jimmy Dore, but I want to remind you all the people who were part of that town hall who supported it. Dr. Cornel West, Breonna Joy Gray, Kyle Kulinski, Crystal Ball, Katie Halper. There were also people who had healthcare crisis that came onto the town hall and talked about their story. I watched all of this play out in real life. In fact, it's part of the reason why I started this show, because I was beyond baffled that not one politician attended that town hall, not one. And it's at Ro Khanna, as much as he likes to tout, we're fighting now, Ro Khanna was nowhere to be found. None of them. No AOC, no Ilhan, not one of them who said they supported Medicare for all was willing to participate in that town hall. It was an utter disgrace to me, in my opinion. This really doesn't have anything to do with Jimmy Dore, despite what Jamal Bowman said on Bad Faith Podcast. What this has to do with is those politicians not wanting to upset Dem leadership because they didn't want to lose their seat. That's really what this is all about. But I really believe that if TYT and Majority Report, if Sam Cedar and all of them got on board with everybody else, who knows? Maybe one or two of them would have come to that town hall, but they didn't. I bring up force the vote to prove a point. Why is it that it's okay now to reintroduce the Medicare for all legislation when you know it's not going to pass, but you didn't want to force the vote for Medicare for all when you knew it wasn't going to pass under Biden? Why is that? The reason is to protect the Democratic Party. They didn't want that vote to happen because they didn't want people to see all the Democrat politicians who would also vote against Medicare for all during the time of a pandemic when people desperately so need it. So that was Pramila Jayapal as well, who was protecting her colleagues in the Democratic Party. The problem that I had with Justice Democrats and with the squad members is that they only wanted to really fight when Donald Trump is president. When Biden was president, you didn't see this. Why wasn't this bill? Why didn't they push this under Biden? Because they didn't want to make the Democrat politicians look bad. The same people who want them out of their party, they choose to protect. This is a big problem that I have with what was supposed to be a progressive movement and a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. I want to show you something else too. We'll go on to see here. Again, this is getting a lot of coverage, ladies and gentlemen. Where were these people during Force the Vote?
Next, lawmakers announcing the introduction of Medicare for all legislation. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders and Representatives Pramila Jayapal and Debbie Dingell. They're joined by allies from unions and advocacy groups at a news conference. It runs about an hour.
I don't know if everyone can read the banner, but there are nurses out there as well. And this is what I saw When I participated in the marches for Medicare for All, there were nurses, there were doctors, there were scholars, like all different people from different walks of life who supported this. There were even some conservatives who supported it and showed the research. There's one doctor in particular showed the research that we can support Medicare for all. And yes, we can afford it. And yes, it would be cheaper than the system that we currently have. Bernie Sanders and Pramila Jayapal were nowhere to be found when we had those marches for Medicare for all. All of the politicians that supported it were contacted about the marches well in advance. Only one politician showed up, and that was Cori Bush, who I believe happened to stumble upon the one in DC. The marches were in over 50 states across the country, and was like, hey, oh, you guys marching for Medicare for all, etc. But from what I heard from people on the ground there, they said that we don't appreciate what you're doing. Her saying the squad didn't appreciate that people were marching for Medicare for all. Why? Because Joe Biden was president. Because it was happening under Democrat control House, Democrat control White House. That's why. This is why I say the Democratic Party is not a truly oppositional party. If you're not willing to fight for those same policies when Democrats are in power, you're not really trying to push back against any oligarchy, which exists in both parties. You're not really trying to press and fight for those issues. It's so obvious, ladies and gentlemen.
Sisters and brothers, welcome to your nation's capital.
You're going to be on this side, Bernie.
I'm going to be on this side. All right. It's a good idea, Senator. Well, thank you. Let me thank all of the nurses who are here. Let me thank the doctors who are here. Let me begin by saying you speak for the overwhelming majority of the American people.
Next, lawmakers.
But every time they told us to vote for the politician who didn't. Biden said that if the Medicare for All bill came across his desk, he would veto it. Bernie Sanders told you to vote for Joe Biden. When Biden was still in the race, by the way, vote for Joe Biden, knowing damn well Biden was not in any position to continue being president of the United States. We're going to get into a little bit more of the speech here. Let's go ahead and bring in this clip as well.
For the fact that healthcare is a human right. For the fact that we waste enormous amounts of money on administration and on profiteering and on advertising. For all of those reasons and more, today, Pramila, Debbie, and I are introducing Medicare for All single-payer legislation. And let me very briefly tell you what this legislation is about. Our legislation would provide comprehensive care to all Americans, rich, poor, young, or old, with zero out-of-pocket expense. It would provide full freedom of choice regarding health care providers. You go to the doctor, the nurse that you want to. No more insurance premiums, no more deductibles, no more co-payments, no more filling out endless forms.
And again, I support all of this. I support Medicare for all. I support ending co-payments. I support all of this. But the best time for us to act on this has already passed. The best time for that was the force the vote moment. Think about all the politicians in Congress that could have been primaried as a result of their vote on that. They didn't want that to happen. And Bernie Sanders still wants you to support the Democratic Party, knowing the majority of the politicians in Congress don't want Medicare for all. He still wants you to support them anyway. This is the game that is played by Bernie Sanders and people like Pramila Jayapal. If they cared so deeply about Medicare for all, they should have been willing to bring this up under Biden's administration. They should have been willing to force a vote for Medicare for all. In fact, I would say Bernie Sanders should have led that effort. That's right. Bernie Sanders should have led a force the vote effort for Medicare for all. It really shouldn't have been podcasters. And this is something I think that really rubbed me the wrong way. Media people, we're here to report the news. We're here to bring on guests to inform you as well. But a lot of the times, a lot of the commentators are not activists. Now, we happen to be fortunate that in this particular space, and those of us that do agree with said policies, there are a few that were activists before they were commentators, right? And they have gone out there and they've marched and participated in protests. But the majority are not. This shouldn't have even been on the shoulders of people like Brianna, Jimmy, Kyle, Crystal, and all of them. It shouldn't have. They should have been the vehicle that was used to spread that message, to advertise it, to host the town hall. But the fight should have been led by Bernie Sanders and DSA, especially DSA, considering it's in their handbook. Bernie was nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found.
No more fighting with the insurance companies to get what you pay for. And comprehensive means comprehensive. It means covering dental care, vision, hearing aids, prescription drugs, and home health care. And you know what else this legislation does? It says to millions of workers in this country, you don't have to stay at a job you don't want to be at just because you have health care at that job. So we have the radical belief that workers at McDonald's deserve the same quality care as executives on Wall Street. Would a Medicare for all healthcare system be expensive? Yes. But while providing comprehensive healthcare for all, it would be significantly less expensive than our current dysfunctional system.
Yeah, I mean, again, all of that is true. Again, like I said, missed opportunities. Pramila Jayapal also spoke as well. I want to show you something that she said here.
Here's the thing. We have never suffered from scarcity in America. Never. We suffer from greed. And more people are losing health care because of these profiteering corporations. We know we can do better. And that's why Bernie, Debbie, and I, and all of our co-sponsors in the House and the Senate are here to reintroduce Medicare for all, the only.
Yeah. Again, like I support Medicare for all. It's really a shame that none of them participated in those marches. They were not willing to force the vote against, Nancy Pelosi for Medicare for all. Then I really do think there could have been a difference. Like I really do. I just think about all the politicians that would have been primaried because they voted against it. And then I don't know, then maybe you do think about it. Those primaries would have happened already. The House seats are only every 2 years, right? So those primaries would have already happened. Those people could have been gone. And then maybe you could get a majority vote for Medicare for all in the House. Like it just, I don't know what to tell you. They didn't do it because they wanted to make Biden look good. They didn't do it because they wanted to protect Joe Biden and to protect the Democratic Party. And I tell you guys, it's very frustrating. And I know many of you that have gone through medical issues, that have gone through these issues with insurance companies, etc. The only other alternative at this point in time for the healthcare system is this is the way that it has to go. People are dying. People are going into debt, medical debt. People are filing bankruptcy, all because they're sick. And unfortunately, the politicians, they care more about protecting their party and protecting Wall Street than they do protecting or saving your life. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.